Today's topic probably is one of the most overlooked topic during the life cycle of a planter tank. It's about lighting period. Before we talk about lighting period, for better understanding, can we talk about the life cycle as a whole of a planted aquarium? For our conversation's sake, let us bifurcate the life cycle into three phases. The startup phase, which is when we plant the plants into the tank, and probably 3 weeks to 1 month, that phase. Then after that, 1 month to 4 months, the stabilizing period. When we say stabilizing period, it's about we ourselves understanding the chemistry of the tank, CO2 getting stabilized, we understand the nutrient requirements of the tank and the plants as a whole, and based on that, our tweak and our understanding about how much dosage we need to do of the nutrients, every nutrients into the tank. Then is there any algae outbreak in the startup phase which we can face out during this phase? So all those actions that we are supposed to make, and plus the ecosystem, the planter tank ecosystem itself will stabilize its environment. Then the last phase, as we call it, the stable phase, anywhere between 4 months to 1 year, 5 months to 1 year, something like that. So let us understand the life cycle into these three phases and then correlate this with the lighting period. Now, this is purely our recommendation. This could change based on your tank, based on your experience, how you want to do. So what we recommend during the startup phase is, if you're using completely in vitro plants, you have to straight away target for 7 hours of lighting period. The reason being, these in vitro plants are coming from highly nutrient rich environment. They are given 12 to 14 hours of lights every day, probably 16 hours based on the condition it's kept. So it's always good to target the full lighting phase from the startup phase itself. But however, if you are using immersed grown plants, potted plants, you have the luxury of reducing the lighting period during startup phase to 5 to 6 hours probably, and you can manage any algae outbreaks because of lighting through that. Then moving on to the second phase, which is the most important phase, the stabilizing phase, because this phase is where we will go through all kind of algae issues. It's where we put most of our efforts trying to understand the equilibrium of the tank, how to achieve the equilibrium, and not only the lighting, we'll be concentrating and stabilizing many other parameters. So it's kind of a stressful phase, as we may call. But in this phase, what we recommend is a lighting period of 7 to 7.5 hours in total. Now, few people go for a fully stressed 7 to 7.5 hours. There are few people who follow blocks of lighting period. It could be 2 times a day, 3 times a day. These two methods, both the methods are fine, but we have to remember that we need to be consistent. Just like how we human beings or any other living organisms that we know of require a light phase and a resting phase, which is dark phase, our plants inside the aquarium also requires a dark phase and a lighting phase or photosynthetic phase. But consistency is key. One need to make sure the photosynthetic period or the lighting period, then followed up with the dark period, should be consistent day in and out. So if you're following a 7 to 7.5 hours one stretch, be it during morning, mid of the day, evening, midnight, it's okay. But you need to be consistent throughout the life cycle, not only during this phase, throughout the life cycle. And very important part is, when you are consistent on lighting phase, you are also automatically consistent on dark phase. Now, even if you follow the block method, which is 3 times a day, 2 times a day splitting across the total hours, it's fine. But again, you have to use a proper timer and make those blocks consistent. Now let's talk about the last phase. Your planted aquarium has achieved the equilibrium. You are not seeing much of algae issues. Plants are thriving well. Then we call it a stable phase. That's when we really start to enjoy the aquarium plants. We love the maintenance during that period. So during this period, you can take the lighting period up to 8 to 8.5 hours. or 9 hours. There are people who go up to 12 hours, but it purely based on your experience, the density, the amount of plants that you are keeping, the demand of the plants, everything. But we would recommend you to keep it anywhere between 8.5 hours, 8 to 8.5 hours during this phase. Now, the immediate question could be, why do you consider only 4 months to 1 year as stable period? So we all know that the planted aquarium is not going to be stable throughout its life. Yes, we can maintain, if we are experienced, even we can maintain it for a couple of years, maybe more than that consistent. But during this period, one will always experience some kind of imbalance. So after 1 year, typically you will find substrate being deteriorating. Some other algae are coming in. CO2 might fluctuate. Your source water parameters might change. A lot of things will happen inside the aquarium. Plants will start decaying. You will see some algae coming in. You will have to reduce the lighting period. You might have to go back to the stabilizing phase, the second phase, then come back to stabilized phase. So I said 4 months to 1 year for the conversation. For the purpose of our conversation, and I hope this 3 phase helped us all understand the probably correct lighting period. I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye-bye.